Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 360 podcast. I am your host, Dr. Gena Crawford, here with my co-host, Dr. Darrius Jeter. We are back again. We are excited to have you. We hope that you are well on today, this first Saturday in the month of October. It is so hard to believe that we are in the month of October already. And so, as we are gearing up for 2026, and I know you're like, why is she talking about 2026? Because 2026 is literally peeking around the corner.
Yep.
And so, if you are a business owner, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a business leader, if you're a ministry leader, you do not want to miss this conversation on today. And so, today we are talking about something that I'm not sure we talk about a lot, especially in the times that we're living in, because sometimes it can be a very touchy topic. And so today we're talking about workplace bullying. And workplace bullying doesn't just happen in business, it happens in ministry as well. So, as an educator, this month is Bully Prevention Month, it's Bully Awareness Month. And so I had some of my coworkers laughing because we were talking about it being geared towards the kids. And I said, well, the tips that they were giving, I said, is that for the kids or for the adults? Because we could use those tips too. And so we thought it would be interesting to have this conversation today about bullying in the workplace. Um, and so when you talk about bullying, oftentimes we think about kids. We think about the mean person in the office building, or we think about the person who's always causing confusion, the person that's fighting or physically fighting another person. Bullying can be very subtle. It can be very subtle. It can be very manipulating. And so we want to dive into this conversation on today. It was interesting because I had a coworker who, this was years ago, and I think she did her dissertation on bullying in the workplace. And so, literally, that was really the first time that I'd ever been exposed to it to that degree, and it was quite shocking. And so, it was to the point where, yeah, she had to go a little bit deeper within the company, within the school system. And so, thought it necessary to have this conversation on today because some of you may be dealing with workplace bullying, or you might be the bully, and you don't even know it. And so, for the times that we're living in, in terms of you really never know what people are dealing with. And so we have to be mindful of people. We have to be mindful of how we treat people, especially if you're trying to get them to do something for you. So let's dive into this conversation. Dr. Darius, what do you have to say to start us off before we dive into some statistics and things?
Um, I think this is a very good topic to talk about because, as you mentioned, like most people think it's just to kids, but when you start talking about bullying, it's more than just kids on the playground, on the bus, in the classroom. Uh, like you mentioned, it's in the corporate spaces too. It's in the ministry too, and it's not just workplace bullying. Is not just in the form of shouting and open confrontation and like you said, sometimes it's subtle. It's the exclusion
Hmm.
from the important conversations that you need to be included in. It's the sabotaging of that person's work or reputation in the workplace. It's the manipulation, like you mentioned. And here's the thing:
Yeah.
it's that constant criticism that's highlighted as accountability. You know, and that
Mm.
continues to chip away at somebody's confidence and the thing about it in the workplace is that when it happens in the workplace, it happens because it's often tolerated. So we're gonna get into it. So we're gonna get into it. But you we need to talk about these numbers first because I think that's gonna be kind of eye opening for people.
It is. So, in doing some research, it's talked about approximately 30% of employees reported experiencing
Wow.
bullying, and it has found to be and effect on, oftentimes a negative effect on people's organizations. And so sometimes we just chalk it up, or people may chalk it up to that person just being the difficult person to deal with. And so now this person has a reputation amongst their colleagues. Don't talk to that person because they're always saying something about this and the other. um, Women are 20% more likely to be bullied than men.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it also talks about additionally certain groups, people who are people who have accumulated a lot of debt, people who have poor living conditions, because sometimes the idea is, as an employer, or you need me. And so, because you need me because of your situation, I can talk to you any kind of way. I can threaten you. Well, it's hard to get a job out here. It's hard. You can't do what you. I give you kind of leverage to come in a little late because you have kids that you have to drop off. So we use certain things and certain manipulating tactics to keep people suppressed. And so that was 20% of women and those who may be financially despaired. Um, Verbal abuse, 43% people have reported that they've been abused verbally as a form of bullying.
Wow.
Just look, how we kind of say little side remarks to people, or we say it in jest, and really it's kind of like, am I to be offended or not? Was that bullying? So verbal abuse. And then there was, you mentioned it, this one was the top percentage: excessive criticism. Excessive criticism. In other words, no matter how hard you try, it's never good
Wow.
enough.
Yeah.
It's never good enough. And then one of the last ones was humiliation. Humiliation. And so, we have to be mindful. This is something that I think, we kind of, we don't see it as bullying, but you know how you pull up the slides in front of the whole company, and a person's name is associated or attached to a project, and one person's name may always be, that can be humiliating.
Yes.
So if my name is always the one at the bottom of the list, and it is kind of put out there as, let's look at this month's results of sales, let's look at this month's ministry, look at who is carrying you. I remember that was said. I had to fold my arms on this one. I remember that was said years ago when I first started teaching, and we were looking at some test scores, and so literally, it was stated, look at the list and look at who's carrying you. Look at who's carrying your grade level.
Wow.
So we walked away like, whoa, okay. And so now it caused it at the time, it caused a little tension amongst my colleagues and I. And then for the person who had the highest scores, she felt a little, ugh, like, how do I respond to this? These are my coworkers. I have to work with these people. And so when we talk about things like humiliating people, be mindful of how you want people to treat you. That's something that that's something that we should always we hold on to. And it talks about the impact of bullying. It impacts your health. 45% of bullied employees reported stress-related health issues. And then there were reporting issues about 75. This is what really got me. 75% of bullying incidences go unreported for fear of retaliation. What do we do?
That's that's crazy. And hearing the numbers, it really kind of I think put things in perspective, um, and also to hear that most of it really goes unreported or unaddressed.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people just label it as, as with anything, it's just a few bad apples. But you know, it's different in the workspace than it is for school with kids who are
Mm-hmm.
trying to find their identity as an adult. For the most part, most of us have walked into our identity, and it really boils down to. I mean, you mentioned something about saying, look at who's carrying you. Well, that comes from the leader. So something many times the bullying in the workplace is reflective of a leadership problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's a leadership problem because the truth is, I think every organization, whether it's a business, a ministry, nonprofit, a school, or whatever, it the culture is reflective of what the leadership allows, ignores, or participates in. And so a lot of times leaders they model that bullying model by leading with fear or
Ooh.
leading with manipulation, or they encourage it by rewarding those who are aggressive or manipulative, who exhibit that behavior, or either they empower the bullying to continue because they never address it. And so I think we as we get older, we have this mentality that, well, we're all adults here, so
Yeah.
that type of thing really doesn't go on, or you need to just stand up for yourself. And what's actually happening is the leader who is responsible for creating the culture for the organization is making the victim responsible for the culture, and it never changes. So that mindset becomes kind of dangerous now, because then eventually what happens is, I mean, you're ignoring the emotional aspect of this, the psychological aspect of all of this. The person who's being mistreated, they start to feel responsible for protecting the culture, because now I got to deal with all this just so I can be included in. And you got to deal with all these, as you mentioned, the subtle criticism, the remarks, the microaggressions,
Yeah.
uh, all those different things begin to play into the mindset. And then what happens is, before you know it, you have an organization where the culture becomes toxic, because now people don't want to be creative. They don't want to share their ideas. They don't want to speak up because they don't want to be criticized. Everybody wants to just kind of shrink back and stay off the radar of those who are boastful and manipulative and critical in all the things, and puff themselves up to feel better about themselves. And so the workspace no longer feels safe. It's a
Yeah.
reflective is reflective of the leadership problem, of the leadership. So that's the
And
first thing that has to be addressed in order to make that change in the workplace, addressing the leadership.
and what I'm finding is, oftentimes you will have leaders who will lead based on, we talked about this before, who will lead based on their personality,
Yeah.
and they will lead like they have been led. And so oftentimes what I'm looking at now is just getting to know, just watching leaders. So I have this, and I blame Catalyst. So I have this habit now of when I go into spaces, I am really like overly observant of especially people in leadership. And so, sometimes it's not that I'm shrinking back or being or kind of like fearful of engaging in conversation. It really is like I'm tapping into, okay, what topic could we talk about next? Ooh, that's a good,
Yeah.
oh, I see red flag there. And so, it is really, I'm looking at the fact that a lot of people are leading based on their personality, or they're leading from a stance of of self ambition, where it's like, what is it going to what's going to make my name great as a leader. And
Right.
so, oftentimes we don't see it as bullying, and it's like we hear it, well, if I did it and I didn't have as much to work with as you have, then you can do it too. And so for some people, it's literally we forget that people are people. We forget that people have different levels of capacity in which they're able to operate. And so just because you can work a 12-hour day and be fine does not mean that everybody can do that. Just because you can go hard day after day after day. I was talking to a coworker yesterday, And we were walking out the building. She said, it's not necessarily my physical energy. She said, but it's taxing me mentally. But, again, it's, well, take, I'll give you 2 days to rest, the weekend. And you're right back again on. And so, this is something that we're seeing, not just, in certain places, but we're seeing it all over. Again, we've seen it where people go into office buildings and they go into workspaces, and people are like, well, we never saw it coming. This is the person who was the quietest person on the floor. This
Right,
is the
right,
person who, at the water cooler, they gave the best advice. Then one day, what happens?
right, right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, and I think what ends up happening is there's this confusion between what a manager is and what a leader is.
Mm-hmm.
A manager manages a system, and as you mentioned, everybody don't thrive in the same system, the same environment. So some environments are designed to be high pressure. You have to have this aggressive tone, but you, as a manager, you manage within that system, and everybody who's in that system functions in that system. As a leader, you have to create multiple different systems to create an overall culture that people who operate in various systems can function in. And so as a leader, you have to become adaptive to your people, and your people have to understand too that, hey, because I operate this way doesn't mean that this person operates this way.
Yes.
So I can't come off at them that way, because that's not how they respond, because again, that's going to come off again as a bullying tactic or a bullying scenario situation. So again, if people don't know the boundaries, then it's most often than not that loudest dominant voice is going to end up taking control, and that
Mm-hmm.
loudest dominant voice isn't always the right voice.
Right.
It's not always the best voice. uh, so like I say, it starts at the top. It starts with leadership. So that's one thing that if it needs to be addressed, I think that's one way we first have to tackle that leadership first, to help them identify what their vision for the culture needs to be for the organization, where they are, and then map out a plan of how to get there.
Yeah. So that's why they did tapping the capitals.
Yes.
There was one other thing that I saw in terms of statistics, was that bullying contributes to increased turnover rates, about 25%. And
Nice.
so, we've seen organizations where um, you look up and literally it's half the staff is gone or a third of the staff is gone. And, for me, sometimes it's difficult because it's like, I was just getting to learn people's names. And you mean they're gone? And so, sometimes and as leaders, even in ministry, even in the church, we have to take a look at these things to say, okay, if year after year, we have to hire a whole new group of people, not because the business is expanding or not because the ministry is expanding, but because we're losing people, or people are choosing to leave. And I think for now, or sometimes it's easier to leave than it is to report.
Yes, it is, because I think a lot of people worry about retaliation,
Hmm.
and who's a lot of times you don't know the power dynamics of an organization. And you don't know who's friends with who, and just because there's a policy of how something is supposed to operate doesn't mean it's going to operate that way. uh, and so again, that's the importance of having culture, because policies are good, but culture is that unspoken rule of how we treat each other, how we communicate with each other. So culture is, if I need to correct you, there's a proper way in how I do that.
Hmm.
If and that can happen whether it's in front of other people or whether it's in private, and your dignity and professionalism and all of that stands, whether it's done in front of a group of people or whether it's done in private. Because everybody understands that culture. So I think that's something that you look at. So that structure and that culture, it happens in and how leaders model it. So it has to be modeled. how do we perform when we're under pressure? The deadline is coming, the thing has to be done, and we're pushing up to the wire. How do we communicate to each other during that pressure? That has to be built into the DNA of the organization to create a culture. Especially, you mentioned ministry, because most times you're working with volunteers in ministry, and
Yeah.
sometimes you can have some of the worst people serving in leadership positions, and they run off all of your good help because they don't know how to talk to people. But
Exactly.
because they always show up, and we can't lose them because they always show up. So now you're in this situation where this person's running off everybody. It's not really helping. Sometimes that person has to be the one to get sat down because they're not reflecting the culture, even though they show up and are always willing to work and do the work.
How hard do you think it's to have those conversations? Because we see it, and it's where you got Sister So and So.
Mhm.
She's been there since the start of the ministry.
Yeah.
Mean as a rattlesnake.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you look at the overall um, increase, monetary increase, she's the one that's doing it. Her ministry is the one that's kind of.
Yeah. And so when you start, it may look like it's different between the business and the ministry in that aspect, because in the business, of course, this person works for you, and in ministry, this person is a volunteer. But actually having that conversation has to be the same,
Yes.
because although this person is somebody that I can depend on, they're reliable and they step up and do the work, if they are not reflecting the overall culture
Mhm.
of the organization, when you have that conversation, we have to talk about, hey, this is what we're expecting. This is how things need to be done. This is the culture. And if that person can't fit the culture, then that person has to, in the business world, you may have to relieve that person,
Yeah.
or in the nonprofit sector ministry, you may have to sit that person down, because again, if that person is carrying the load and they're carrying it by themselves, is probably because they're running everybody else off who can come in and actually help share the load. But they never get to share the load because they get ran off.
So where do you think this started? Like, um, you have certain people who are leaders who are just kind of like having that mentality of you work for me, and I'm the person that's paying your bill. If you, and even talking about ministry in certain denominations, um, you got to get past me to get to the next level.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
As the as from what perspective, I guess.
From both, if you're
From,
talking about, say, let's do ministry.
okay.
You're part of a denomination where you've got to go through certain processes and certain procedures, right?
Okay.
And so, in order to get to the next level, you got to go through certain people.
Yeah.
They're not always the nicest people.
Yeah. So I'm saying, are you saying, like, say when we're talking ministry, you talking about me as a church member, or are you talking about me coming in as the consultant helping you see this problem?
As a church member.
As the church member. Uh, Again, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and I think that's one of the things that rarely ever happens, is again because you're uncomfortable approaching that leader to say, hey, this is this is how I feel. This is how you're making me feel. This is how you are making the situation look, and kind of having that conversation. It's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's one that needs to be had, because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you have to come to the decision of whether or not this is a organization I need to be a part of. Even if you're talking about the church, is this the church that's for me? Because again, I'm not getting paid to come to church. I'm coming to grow my relationship with God, and also to be a part of the church, to serve in the mission and the ministry of the church. But if I shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable doing that. It shouldn't be like a cult. It shouldn't have to feel like a cult where I feel like I'm going to be mistreated or punished because I'm not in line with what you're thinking in some respect.
Even hate.
Yeah. Yeah. We gotta start having those conversations. We gotta start having those conversations in the ministry and in the business. And sometimes in the business, yeah, they'll hold it over your head and I'm paying your bills. I'm the one who cut the check. And at some point in the time, you may just have to bite the bullet on that and say, okay, and keep playing the game while you look for somewhere else to go.
Mm. So let me ask you. So now, from the consulting aspect of it, do you think this is something that is necessary in business and in ministry to bring in those people to like catalysts?
Yes.
uh, for people to really see, because a lot of times people may not understand why they have a high turnover rate or why people are not functioning or why people are not showing up. They think it's because it's the people and it's the times and it's that and the other. And so how do you enter into that space
So
and
I
have
think,
a real conversation with
yeah,
leaders?
yeah. So I think, sometimes it's difficult for us to see when we're so close to it. And one thing I like to say is sometimes it's when you start a business or an organization or something, you birthed it out. That's your baby. And so look at it in the medical field like this. You're not allowed to operate on your baby. Why? Because there are certain things that has to be done that you can't mentally bring yourself to do. I can't mentally bring myself to cut my child. That's gonna cause pain. So somebody else who has to come in and do that. So when you're talking about organization and ministry or business or whatever, sometimes you're so close, you can't necessarily see why people are leaving
Mm-hmm.
because you have this rose colored vision. It's still to you, it still looks like the perfect situation that you always envisioned it to be, and it's not. And sometimes you need somebody with a different perspective, an outside perspective, to come in and say, well, listen, the reason your thing isn't growing is because look at these people on the back door who are opening the door for people. Yeah, they've been with you from the start, but look at their attitude. Look at how they're greeting people. Look at how people are interacting with them. When people walk through the door, they don't feel welcome. They don't feel comfortable. Look at how they're talking to the children. So now a parent sees them talking to a child, see them talking to their child like this, they become defensive. And now you have confrontation going on because these key people that you have in key positions don't know how to talk to people. So this is why they're running away. Well, let's look at why people aren't giving. Do they know the purpose of the tithe? Do they understand how the money is divvied up? Do they see
Mm-hmm.
where it's going? Those conversations have to be had. Is there some type of transparency where people can come in and they can look at their giving history? I mean, you can't look at the giving history of everybody else because that's their
Right.
own personal business, but can they look at, as a member, can they come in and look at the budget and see how the money is being spent? Those type of conversations have to be happening. So sometimes you have to show people up front, hey, it's not as rose colored as you see it. This is what the reality of it actually is. And these are the changes that need to be made. And sometimes you may have to have them bring somebody else in who can make those changes because again, sometimes you can't bring yourself to make the necessary changes that need to be made because again, that's your baby.
That's good. Like I never thought of it as not being able to operate on your own child.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
even if you are adopted, you
Yeah.
still you're handing your child over to somebody else to make sure that because you are too attached to
Right.
the
Right.
situation, your emotions may kick in, and
Right.
now you take in and so do you think that especially in this country, do you think that we have accepted bullying as the norm?
We have. We have because um we look at it as it's the only way to motivate
Ooh,
somebody to get something done. It goes all the way back down to us being kids and participating in sports and different clubs and activities. Is this form of, well, this is how we make you mentally tough. So it is, and but everybody isn't built to be that way. So we got the generation gaps and all these different things, and People talk about how different their generation is from the next, and
Mm-hmm.
we're Generation X. We were the latchkey kids. We had, we cried. You Mosey, what you crying about? We weren't allowed to be depressed and all those things. You ain't
Yeah.
got no bills to pay. What you depressed? So that's how society has kind of that's how our society has done us. But it's not. I think we're just now coming to the realization of you know mental health is a real thing. You
It,
know, so maybe when you get hurt playing football, coach say rub some dirt on it. Maybe that's not the best approach. Take an aspirin too. Maybe that's not the best thing to say. But yeah, I do believe it has become it's so acceptable in our American culture.
yeah. I was thinking, it's like I'm gonna tax you mentally and then send you to therapy.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna tax you mentally. I'm gonna mess with your mind. But over here, I'm offering you therapy.
And then call you weak for going to therapy.
Yes. What is
Yeah,
that about?
yeah. So yeah, it's definitely it's acceptable in our society. Um, and it's rewarded when you do it in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to get your team in line, and that's what we tell them. And they go to barking orders to get their team in line or get their section in line, get their program in line. We don't know how to properly motivate different people. Some people may need that. Other people may need something different. So that's the difference between being a manager and a leader, knowing how to develop the culture rather than
Yeah.
just working a system.
And even I think it's necessary. I'm still on. I'm gonna. We'll talk off camera, but what I'm thinking because I don't want nobody to take what I'm thinking. But I just it bothers me to know that we feel like tearing people down is the way to lift them up.
Right.
We see it in sports, we see it in we just see it all around.
Right.
And not to just do it privately, but now it's acceptable to do it publicly.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
public humiliation is going to make you do better. It's going to make you want to be better. No, it's humiliating.
Right. Right. And it's you and like I say, that becomes part of the culture because now when you do it quote unquote effectively in public,
Hmm.
it makes you look like a strong quote unquote leader, which it does not. The bully tactics, the fear tactics. I worked for a nonprofit organization back in the day, and like I say, fundraising is the lifeblood of any nonprofit organization. And at this particular time, money was coming in slow, and we had one of the head of our organization say, I don't know what you need to motivate you. If you need to think of it as you not getting a paycheck because you no longer work here, let that be part of your motivation. And so, that's a fear tactic.
Yes.
And so when you put that type of pressure on people, some people can perform, others cannot. And so what ends up happening? People start to cut corners. The
Hmm.
quality goes down. I mean, they had the whole back in the day APS cheating scandal because of the performance that had to come down. And I started school in APS, and as you know, and I talk about some of my earliest memories go back to age 3. So my earliest memories go back to age 3. I pretty well remember what happened in kindergarten and first grade, and I can tell you that from when the APS cheating scandal started in the 2000s, I can remember teachers changing grade back when I was in first grade in APS. So it was not a new thing. It was
No.
not on that superintendent who they tried to pin it on. That was
Right.
an ingrained issue from generations before. But when you start to do that, you start to compromise the mission of your
Yes.
organization, you compromise the vision, you compromise the quality of work, all because you're using bullying tactics on people who don't respond to that. because I'm not going to lose my job because little Johnny don't want to read. He came in a bad mood and he don't want to take his test, and I get my performance based off of his test and my income based on his test. No, little Johnny's grade is going to get changed because I can't go home and not feed my kid because he don't feel like doing work. It don't make sense. So, those are the situations you're putting people in, and then you sit back and wonder why they did what they did. You affected their livelihood. You affected their ability to pay their bills, to take care of their family because you wanted them to produce an output for you based on a scare tactic that you used. It's
And
not
even
always fair.
now, it's to the point where, we have to be mindful of that because what I see now is you can't perform, push you out the way, bring
Right,
somebody else in.
right,
So we've lost that human factor. We've lost that a level of empathy for people. It's no longer let me help you, let me help
right,
train you, let me help discover. And not so much that you're tapping into a person's personal business. You never know what people are dealing with.
right,
There are people
right,
who are coming to work every day burdened,
right,
but knowing that they have to perform
right,
because they're thinking about, I'm the only person in the house working.
right,
So I'm not going to report it. I just kind of have to endure it.
right, right. And again, it goes back to leadership, and it goes back to understanding the difference between being a manager and a leader. A leader builds other leaders. They show them how to operate in certain situations and circumstances. Like you say, you don't know what a person is dealing with. And it's not that you want to get in their personal business, but you hired them for a reason. You saw
Yes.
something in them when you hired them. So instead of developing them because they didn't perform, you get rid of them. That's what a manager does because he's managing a system and you're not fitting the system. What a leader does is says, listen, I don't know what's going on in your personal life. I know we all got stuff going on, and you may not want to share that with me, but let me show you how to, at a particular point in time, compartmentalize. And you got to kind of figure out how to put this in a box right now so that you can accomplish this right now. It's not that this is not important, but you have to function. And you show them and walk them through
Yes.
it. And maybe compartmentalizing may not be the right thing to do, but you show them how to function and perform at certain for every condition that they may face, and you show that empathy. If you ever want to talk about it, we got resources. You take time here and there or whatever, but you build the whole person and not just focus on what the bottom line is. And that's how you have people who buy into the mission and the vision of an organization because they feel like they're a part of it because you value them and not just what they
Yes.
can give you.
And that's why, for those who are listening, that is why you need to have catalysts come in to help you
Yes.
because we're good at doing that. And we're not good. We're not just saying that we're good on paper. Literally, we're good based on personal experience. And so, it's not just something that we're reading about and we're dishing out to other people, but literally, collectively and individually, we have the experience to say, hey, let us help you navigate through these uncomfortable waters. And so you may be the person say, oh, I never thought about the whole bullying piece. I never thought about, let me go back and take another look at my leadership style. I'm not comfortable having those conversations with people. Let us show you how. Let us come in and talk to those people who may have difficulty working under pressure. Let us show you how. And so simply because you're saying I need help with my business, I need help with my ministry, oftentimes people see it as a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of maturity to say if I'm not good at certain, that's just like you're going out there to play football. You know you're gonna get tackled.
Yep.
You know absolutely nothing about football. You are the couch coach. You're the couch coach. And so literally you may be the couch coach, but there are people who are hired. There are people who are saying, "Hey, I need you to come in." When you look at a team, I'm not really a big sports person, but I do know I see a whole bunch of people down on the field. And so I know you have your head coach and then you have those other people that help to assist you. You have the owner. The owner's not out there coaching. At least I don't think they are. But the owner's not out there coaching. They have hired people to help the team win.
That's it. That's it. That is it. Because again, as you say, there are times when there are some things you may see that need to be done, but because it's your baby, you don't want to do it. So you do what? Let me find another way. And all you're doing is spinning your wheels, chasing other things, trying to do other things because you can't bring yourself to do the thing you know needs to be done. Because again, that's your baby. Let us help you with that. That's what we're here to do. So listen, we thank y'all for spending this Saturday morning with us here on the 360. Subscribe to our YouTube page. If you need a discovery call to talk about some of the stuff, go to our website, catalyst360consulting.com. But we look forward to spending another Saturday with you in the future. So be on the lookout for our next episode to drop soon. We will see you then. Take care, everybody.